Hi, this is the second short lecture on Chapter 3. In the first lecture, we looked at how to identify the type and level of diction and to use the diction to better understand the literal meaning of the poem. We also looked at how to use a dictionary, and specifically the Oxford English Dictionary, to better understand the kind of work the poet is asking specific words to do in the poem. Now I'd like us to turn our attention to allusion. Allusion is a brief and sometimes indirect reference to a person, place, or thing. And through allusion, the poet can enrich the meaning of the text. I've also included a definition for epigram. This comes from Chapter 10, and I've included it because our first example of allusion is going to come in the form of an epigram. Right, so an epigram is a short comic poem that often turns at the end with some sharp wit or unexpected stinger. So let's see how that works in this example. Friend, on this scaffold Thomas More lies dead, who would not cut the body from the head. To appreciate the wit in this poem and the turn that takes place between the first line and the second line, we have to know a little bit about the Reformation, an early 16th to mid-17th century European movement. And for the purposes of this poem, we need to remember that Britain's King Henry VIII had declared himself the supreme head of the Church of England and had separated from the Catholic Church headed by the Pope. Thomas More was a Catholic, and he did not support Henry declaring himself the head of the Church of England. And so he did not support moving the body, or the church, away from the head, the Pope. The irony in this poem is that More was accused of treason and was beheaded. And so he literally lost his head for refusing to separate the church from the Pope, or the church from its head. The second example I want to look at is a poem by Carl Sandburg, Grass. Pile the bodies high at Austerlitz and Waterloo. Shovel them under and let me work. I am the grass, I cover all. And pile them high at Gettysburg, and pile them high at Ypres and Verdun. Shovel them under and let me work. 2 years, 10 years, and passengers ask the conductor, what place is this? Where are we now? I am the grass, let me work. So first of all, the speaker in this poem might remind us of speakers from some of the examples in Chapter 2, where we had a hawk and an onion. And here we have the grass, another non-human speaker. The allusions in the poem come in the form of battles. So Austerlitz is a battle that Napoleon won. Waterloo is a battle that Napoleon lost. In each instance, there were bodies piled high. There was a winner and there was a loser, and the grass, over time, covers up the evidence of the battles. Then the speaker goes on to refer to battles at Gettysburg, the American Civil War, and battles from World War I, and again asks that the grass can continue its work to cover up the evidence of the battles. Finally, the speaker suggests that over time, as the grass does its work, as the evidence disappears, people forget about the battles and about the cost of war. So how do we determine the tone of this poem? Is it positive? Is there a sense that the grass covers up the evidence of battle, the dead return to the earth, and we have a chance to try to live peacefully again? Or, more likely, is it that history shows us the repeated instances of war and asks us not to forget, even though the grass covers the evidence, not to forget the emotional and physical cost of battle? I think the second interpretation is more likely, And one reason for that is the repetition, not just the lining up of different battles over time, but the repetition of lines in the poem and pile them high and pile them high. So we get this sense, again, the repeated cost of war. That poem always reminds me of this haiku by Matsuo Basho, the first master of haiku. Summer grass, all that remains of warriors' dreams. This is translated by David Landis Barnhill. And I thought it was a good poem just to reference because of the reference to grass and the idea that after a battle, eventually the soldiers' or warriors' dreams are gone, the bodies are gone, the grass has covered it up, the grass has done its work. But I also thought it was a good poem to reference here because Basho is actually alluding to lines from a poem by Du Fu from the Tang Dynasty, a Chinese poet, Du Fu. And so this is both an example of allusion and a similar subject matter to Sandberg's poem. If you look on Moodle, you'll see that I've included links. One link is to a podcast about J.B. Cunningham. There's some information about him, and then a recording of Cunningham reading his poems. And there's also a link to an elegy written by one of our textbook authors, X.J. Kennedy, written for Cunningham when Cunningham passed away. So please do check out the extra resources on Moodle.